আসসালামু আলাইকুম ওয়া রাহমাতুল্লাহি ওয়া বারাকাতু। কেন আছো রোহিঙ্গা বাবেনেন গম আছো বলে আশা করির আলহামদুলিল্লাহ হাই কম আছি। আজ যজ্ঞ বা ইন্দর মন্তু ইংলিশ জুবানর ভিডিও দিবাল্লা সার দুনিয়া এগাগুরাতু রোহিঙ্গার জিনোসাইটর দিনর ইয়াদগারির মাঝে ইংলিশ জুবান লইয়রে দেশ বিদেশত্তু রোহিঙ্গাল্লা হামগরদ্দে হেন্দিল্লা 12 জন 13 জন বিদেশি মানুষ লই রোহিঙ্গার দুয়া তিন্ন অ্যাক্টিভিস্ট লই ইংলিশ জুবানৰ মাঝে রোহিঙ্গার 25 আগস্টর ফেরেশানির দিনৰ মাঝে খন মানসে রোহিঙ্গাল্লা বলিয়রে আওয়াসকল তুলে দে রোহিঙ্গাল্লা হাম করে দে হেন্দেলা মানুষসকলর ভিডিওর বাবতে যদি ইন্টারেস্ট রাখো দলে ভিডিওরে পুরা চাইলে বুঝি পারিবা বলি আশা করি।
Thank you for taking the time to share with us your insight and expertise from your positions in the governments, international organization, and others. Our distinguished speakers today are Under-Secretary Uzrazia, Under-Secretary for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights at the U.S. State Department, the Right Honorable Annie Mary Trevelyan, MP, Minister of State in the British government for Indo-Pacific, His Excellency Rashad Hussain, United States Ambassador at Large, State Department, and Honorable Dauda Jallow, Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Republic of the Gambia, His Excellency Bob Reid, Ambassador to the United Nations of Canada, who will address us with video link. His Excellency Ambassador Riaz, Ambassador to the Hague from Bangladesh government. Mr. Thomas Cantana, legal representative of the Rohingya Genocide Remembrance jurisdiction case in Argentina, former UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Burma. And Mr. Aslan Sulaiman, head of legal team, Gambia legal case at Solihull. Mr. Tom Andrews, UN Special Reporter on the situation of human rights in Burma. He will give remark with a video link. And Mr. Nicholas Komjian, head of Independent Investigation Mechanism for Myanmar. Ms. Naomi Kikula, director of the Simon Court Center for Prevention of Genocide at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. His Excellency Yuyen Wayu Nigram, representative of Indonesia, ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, and Mr. Mansoor Hassan, OBE, Executive Director for Peace and Justice at Bragg University. Thank you all for making the time to join us today. I would like to begin this event by making some short remarks. We meet today to commemorate 6th anniversary of attacks, the Rohingya in 2017, the attacks that amount to genocide. Thousands of our Rohingya brothers and sisters were killed and 800,000 were forced to flee across the border to Bangladesh. There they are still in despair in human conditions, made worse by recent aid cards by the international community. This is indefensible. The world is leaving genocide victims to stop. I want to see a renewed focus, justice and accountability, and more action from international community to fulfill its commitment to hold the Burmese military accountable for its actions and ensuring justice for the Rohingya people. This is crucial to restore the humanity and dignity of the victims and survivors of the Rohingya genocide. We will never give up until justice is done. We will go wherever our plight for justice is hard. We will work hard and very hard. Ladies and gentlemen, Rohingyas are doing what we can to secure justice for the Rohingya genocide. In June this year, for the first time ever, Rohingya genocide survivors gave evidence in a court of law in the universal jurisdiction case they're brought by my organization, Burmese Rohingya Organization UK. We are hoping that the next step will be arrest warrants for the perpetrators of genocide. Finally, the impunity is running out for the Burmese military. The case is as alive as ever. Just recently, in June, 7 survivors made ordinary historic journey to Argentina. 1 man and 6 women from the refugee camp in Bangladesh gave in-person testimony to the court in Buenos Aires. Each of them was given all necessary time to describe the atrocities committed in their village. They offered powerful evidence to the court about all crimes that integrated the genocide plan. Furthermore, the file has evidence indicating the identities of those responsible of the genocide and the crimes against humanity committed. We believe that sooner or later, wherever they are, whatever they do, the perpetrators will hear about Argentina court. To be precise, court may issue arrest warrants with intervention of Interpol. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the path other jurisdictions around the world will help to uphold justice. Perpetrators will finally face punishment for the genocide against Rohingya. We are convinced that this is the right and the only way forward. We really hope that international community will also will help us to get justice. We will hear from other speakers about going legal processes relating to the genocide of Rohingya. So I stop here. Thank you all for your attention. Now I would like to invite Under Secretary Uzrazia, Under Secretary of Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights at the US State Department, Under Secretary Uzrazia. I will turn to you.
Thank you. It's my sincere honor to speak with you today as we commemorate 6 years since the start of the horrific genocide against Rohingya. Let me start by thanking the organizing committee for arranging this important remembrance. By doing so, you've ensured that we take the time to remember those lives lost and to galvanize our efforts to hold accountable those who perpetrated these crimes. The abundance of speakers joining us today from all over the world makes clear how important it is to so many of us to take this time to reflect and to explore what more we can do to prevent a recurrence of such atrocities. I'd also like to thank members of the Rohingya diaspora who are with us. I applaud your resilience in the face of ongoing persecution. Over the course of 2016 and 2017, Burma's military brutally attacked Rohingya communities. Systemic acts of violence, including torture, sexual and gender-based violence, and mass killings led to large-scale displacement and the loss of thousands of innocent lives. They targeted one of the most vulnerable and marginalized populations in Burma, forcing over 740,000 Rohingya to seek refuge in Bangladesh. The rippling impact of those attacks continues today, 6 years later. Bangladesh hosts nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees, with significant numbers seeking refuge in nearby countries. Many more remain internally displaced in Rakhine State. During my own visit to Bangladesh in July, I met with Rohingya refugees who shared personal stories of the horrific violence they and their families endured in Burma and the fear of continued persecution that prevents their return. The gradual loss of rights, citizenship, homes, and even their lives in the years leading up to the 2017 outbreak of atrocities make clear that the regime sought to destroy Rohingya communities based on a false, discriminatory narrative of ethnic and religious differences. This false narrative attempted to obscure the fact that Rohingya have been an integral part of Burma's society for generations. The United States remembers what Rohingya have lost and continue to lose. Today, we are unwavering in our commitment to provide assistance to survivors and victims, to seek accountability for those responsible, and to pursue justice for the survivors and victims. In terms of providing assistance, the United States is the leading single donor of life-saving humanitarian assistance to this cause. We've provided more than $2.1 billion to assist those afflicted and affected by the crisis in Burma, Bangladesh, and elsewhere in the region since 2017. Our assistance supports the full spectrum of Rohingya humanitarian needs, including shelter, healthcare, education, as well as specialized mental health and psychosocial support for survivors of trauma. We believe such services are essential to minimize the devastating impact of genocide and other atrocities. Recognizing that the Rohingya cannot safely return to their homeland of Burma under current circumstances, resettlement is another important way in which we contribute. Since 2009, the United States has warmly welcomed nearly 13,000 Rohingya from the region, including from Bangladesh. Our work is not just humanitarian, though. We also must move towards accountability. The United States has shared information with the Gambia in connection with the case it brought against Burma in connection with the case it brought against Burma under the Genocide Convention at the International Court of Justice for the atrocities committed against the Rohingya. We also provide support to the UN's independent investigative mechanism for Myanmar, which has a mandate to collect, consolidate, preserve, and analyze evidence of the most serious international crimes and violations of international law committed in Burma since 2011. U.S. support includes providing the mechanism with $2 million of funding to strengthen its ability to conduct open source investigations and protect witnesses and victims. But we are not alone in seeking accountability. On Wednesday, we joined 12 other nations on the UN Security Council in a joint statement calling out the continued, unrelenting violence perpetrated by the military regime. This statement called on the regime to restore the rights of the Rohingya and serve to keep high-level focus on your plight. Also on Wednesday, the United States expanded its Burma-related sanction authorities to include any foreign individual or entity operating in the jet fuel sector of Burma's economy, and designated 2 individuals and 3 entities under this authority. This expansion follows U.S. sanctions actions already taken this year that designated Burma's Ministry of Defense, its 2 largest regime-controlled banks, the Ministry of Energy, and other individual militarily affiliated cronies. We will continue to use our sanctions authorities to deprive the military regime of the resources that enable it to oppress its people, and we urge others to take similar accountability measures. Justice for victims is also crucial. The United States coordinates with international partners and non-governmental organizations to support Rohingya courageously seeking justice in the courts of Argentina for the atrocities committed against them. We actively work with civil society and members of the Rohingya community to document the atrocities and other abuses committed against them. We stand ready to support a holistic transitional justice process to address the long history of atrocities once such a process becomes viable, to respect the demands of victims and survivors for truth, reparation, justice, and non-recurrence. Secretary Blinken's determination in March 2022 that members of Burma's military committed genocide and crimes against humanity against Rohingya was a historic occasion. This marked only the 8th time that the United States has come to such a critical conclusion. But acknowledging the genocide was the first step, not the last. We all must take the next steps together to bring an end to the violence and prevent the recurrence of atrocities. We must take into account the needs of survivors, including creating the conditions to enable refugees safe, voluntary, dignified, and sustainable return. We must address the military's continued impunity for human rights abuses. And we must support the fight for justice for those who have suffered. Taking these steps is how we can ensure a peaceful, prosperous, and democratic Burma that respects the human rights of all. To the Rohingya, please accept my sincere condolences on this heartbreaking anniversary. I continue to be inspired by your commitment and your resilience. Please know that the United States stands with you. We will continue to advocate for respect for your human rights and for justice. And we will do so working alongside survivors, advocates, and allies like all of you with us here today. Mr. Tu'un, thank you again for the honor of speaking at this powerful and moving commemoration.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary Uzrazia. You really motivated our committee and genocide survivors. And thank you for your continued support and solidarity to the Rohingya people. Now, our second speaker, the Right Honorable Annie Mary Trevelyan, MP, Minister of State in the British government for the Indo-Pacific. I would like to request Minister to give a short remark.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you who've organised this event today and for the chance for me to be able to join you on behalf of the UK government. It's vital that we keep the tragedy inflicted upon the Rohingya from 2017 in the spotlight. I was personally humbled to visit the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh earlier this year and to hear some of their truly shocking testimonies, but also to see their remarkable resilience firsthand. I was able to express my gratitude to the government of Bangladesh for the immense generosity that they continue to show to around 1 million refugees who are living in the camps in and around Cox's Bazar. As you've set out, most of them fled the brutal violence carried out by the Myanmar military in 2017. It is an appalling tragedy that so many were killed, that there has not yet been accountability for those atrocities, and that so many have so far been unable to return to their homes. The plight of the 600,000 Rohingya who remain in Myanmar's Rakhine state is also very grave. They continue to endure systematic discrimination, denied citizenship, denied access to services, and almost a quarter have been confined to camps for internally displaced persons for more than a decade. Many, of course, were disproportionately affected by the recent destruction caused by Cyclone Mocha in Myanmar as a direct result of those severe restrictions imposed on their movement by the military. So the UK government remains committed to supporting the Rohingya on both sides of the border. Since 2017, we have provided over £360 million of support to Rohingya and neighbouring communities in Bangladesh, and nearly £30 million for Rohingya and other Muslim communities in Rakhine State. This has provided life-saving food, water, shelter, and healthcare, as well as education and protection. And we continue to speak out in support of the Rohingya on the international stage. We echo their hopes and aspirations for a sustainable future, including that return to Myanmar when those conditions allow, in line with those UNHCR principles of voluntary, safe, dignified, and sustainable returns. We also continue to pursue justice and accountability, and we have been a long-standing supporter of the International Court of Justice case between the Gambia and Myanmar, to which we will be submitting an intervention. We have also imposed sanctions on Myanmar military-linked businesses who funded those clearance operations in 2017. True justice for the Rohingya demands meaningful accountability, the restoration of Myanmar citizenship, and ending the systematic human rights violations that they have suffered for decades. So as we meet today, 6 years after this tragedy escalated in the most horrifying of ways. I reaffirm the UK government's commitment to keep the international spotlight on this crisis. We will not rest until the Rohingya can return home safely with the justice and the dignity that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, the Right Honorable Annie Marie, for your strong remarks. And you highlighted justice and accountability, and UK has joined last year. That is very good moving forward for the future for justice cases. And now I would like to request His Excellency Rashad Hussain, United States Department. I would like to request you to give a short remark.
Yes, good morning. It's such an honor to be with you today on this important day. And really, this day, in many respects, the most important aspect of this day is to remember that the best way to honor the Rohingya is to make sure that Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day is truly every day. Since I visited Cox's Bazar in 2017 and last year, there's literally not a day that goes by that I don't remember the people that we met with, the Rohingya brothers and sisters that are there. I know that there can be a tendency to think of Rohingya as victims that are in a faraway land, and sometimes we do so in a way that can even be otherizing in some respects, to think of them in a way where we have our own lives and they have their own distinct lives. But when I was at Cox's Bazar, I remember thinking that there's fundamentally no difference between me and the people that are there. Of course, none of us chooses where we're born and when we're born. And when I remember the people that were there, I remember that they share the same hopes as me and my family, the same aspirations as me and my family. And when I see the children that are there, I see my own children. So this is something that's very personal to me, and it's important that on this day we use it as a way of remembering that our work must continue every single day. In my own family, my sister is a pediatrician, and she has also traveled to Cox's Bazar on a medical mission. So the work truly does continue every day. I'm very proud that one of my colleagues, who's former colleagues in the government, who's on the call today, Arslan Soleiman, is doing such good work at the International Court of Justice, and we're doing everything that we can to support the efforts that are occurring there for justice and accountability. And very grateful, of course, to the Attorney General of Gambia for the leadership in this case and for the really moving and transformative legal work and the novel theories that they're bringing forward that I think will help not just Rohingya that are suffering, but really can set an incredible precedent for future cases and to bring accountability and to serve as a deterrent to make sure that people understand that this type of oppression will not be forgotten and will not be neglected and will not escape the attention of the international community. I want to, of course, express my deep appreciation to the organizing committee for facilitating such a powerful and commemoration for 6 years of atrocities against the Rohingya. The United States is very fortunate to have our strong partnerships with you. And I want to honor the strength, the resilience, and the leadership of the Rohingya community all over the world. Your efforts and your unwavering commitment to human rights and fundamental freedoms in Burma and the global Rohingya community truly are inspiring. And we want to thank you for everything that you're doing to elevate Rohingya voices and aspirations and forging a more inclusive and democratic future in Burma. We are proud to be your partners in this effort, and we can't do the work that we're doing without your consultation on a day-to-day basis. As the people of Burma know far too well, the human rights situation and the humanitarian crisis in the aftermath of the February 2021 coup are just the latest manifestations of the military's decade-long repression. Over years, the military has pulled from the same savage playbook over and over again, entrenching a pattern of repressive behavior that has shown no mercy to members of marginalized populations, including women and children, and even members of the majority community. And in its brutal campaign, the military has targeted individuals, in part due to their religious or their ethnic identity. And throughout Burma, in the post-coup environment, already vulnerable communities, including civil society representatives, human rights activists, and members of religious and ethnic groups, continue to face heightened risk of atrocities and other abuses. After Secretary Blinken made the genocide and crimes against the crimes against humanity determination announcement last year, as I mentioned, I had a chance to travel to Cox's Bazar, where I met with Rohingya, including with diverse parts of the community, the Muslim community, of course, but also the Christians that are there, the Hindus that are there to advocate for their rights, including the rights to continue to pursue education and other opportunities essential to their livelihood and prosperity. The educational situation and the crisis that we have is something that has been at the forefront of my efforts and communication with the government and with our colleagues all around the world. I'm deeply concerned about the long-term effects of the education gap that's facing Rohingya children who remain in Burma and the refugees. And for this entire generation of children, their lack of education isn't just related to the formal classroom setting. We have to take every opportunity we can to make sure that they have education because of its inherent value in teaching individuals how to interact with one another, how to engage with one another. And so the experiential aspect of being in school with other children cannot be understated, in addition to the academic lessons and the learning that they are missing. Teaching pluralism is an important priority for the work that we're doing in our office. On the sidelines of the UN General Assembly last year, we actually launched a initiative entitled Pathways to Respect, which is an effort that highlights the importance of teaching respect and tolerance to ensure that students learn the value of the beautiful diversity of religious and non-religious communities in the world. Education, of course, is one of our most important tools, also in countering the propagation of hate all around the world. And in this day and age in which we see so much hate that is spreading so quickly on social media, it is critical that we have educational efforts to ensure that when people are exposed to the types of hatred that they're seeing, that they have the ability to evaluate it, to look at the arguments and the claims that are being forward, and to deconstruct them and to refute them, and then to counter them with speech, and to counter them with the correct information that can help bring people together. We are also proud that the United States assistant has supported the rollout of the Myanmar curriculum, a major milestone toward offering all Rohingya children in Bangladesh an opportunity for a formal education. The 2023-2024 academic year marks the first time, in fact, that Rohingya refugee children of all ages will be studying under the Myanmar curriculum. These opportunities allow refugees to build critical skills to sustainably reintegrate into Rakhine State when, of course, the conditions allow for a safe return, for a dignified return, and for a voluntary and sustainable return. So we persist in this work because of the unfortunate truth that many of the challenges to freedom of religion or belief that we see in the world today are structural, they're systemic, and they're deeply entrenched. And these challenges demand sustained commitment from all of us. They demand sustained commitment from all of us who are, of course, unwilling to accept hatred. We're unwilling to accept intolerance, and we're unwilling to accept persecution as the status quo. And that's why on a day-to-day basis, we confer with civil society leaders such as yourselves, who are partnering with us not only in this effort, but who also are challenging us in the United States government and governments around the world and multilateral institutions to do better. And I urge you to continue to do so, to make it clear when we're falling short, to make it clear that there is more work that needs to be done, to tell us where the gaps are, to continue to provide your valuable guidance and expertise. Because without that, we will not be as successful as we absolutely have to be at such a critical time. My colleagues and I have supported your international efforts, which are critical to protecting freedom of religion or belief around the world. And today, we honor the memory of the victims. We recognize the survivors and their suffering. We honor your strength, we honor your resilience and the determination of Rohingya around the world. And we have to remember that once we've made, of course, this genocide determination, it's just a first step. And on a day like this, it's the most important reminder that every single day has to be Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day, and the work must continue, and our collaboration must continue. And we urge you to do everything that you can to make sure that we're doing our part as your representatives, as your advocates, as we pledge to continue to be in this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Rashad Hussain, for your remarkable notes, especially religious freedom issue. This is very important to deal all of the partners from Burma to continue to deal with that. And on top of that, you have highlighted education issue in the camp for the Rohingya genocide survivors. Education is very important. We have to rebuild our community to move forward. And Burmese military is trying to destroy us. We need to rebuild our community. So for the genocide survivors, education is very important to move forward to rebuild our community. Thanks again for your remarks. And now our next speaker is actually the Honorable Dauda Jallow, Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Republic of Gambia. Unfortunately, he is not very well. He couldn't join. And we always, thanks to Gambia, who has been a champion to file a case, International Court of Justice, of genocide. So we are happy to continue to work together with Gambia. We Rohingyas are expressing many thanks to Gambia again. And as he is not here now, I will move to, to request to speak His Excellency Ambassador Riaz. He is Bangladesh ambassador to The Hague. Ambassador Riaz, I will turn over to you now.
Thank you, distinguished panelists and Tunkin, obviously, for having me over at this somber moment when 6 years down the line we are remembering the genocide victims. And I'll try to share very quickly some of our considerations and perspectives. I need not harp on what has been done on the ground, and many have already reflected on those. As things stand now, and as we see Rohingya genocide, they return, resolution sits in the midst of a world of competing issues and geopolitics. I think we can't ignore that. And looks like the interest on a brutal atrocity, frankly, is declining. Many perhaps realize little that the ways the issue is also destabilizing Bangladesh society and economy, and if not greater neighborhood, even beyond South Asia. As much as humanitarian support is in consideration, the Rohingyas equally needs political support. There cannot be any doubt about it. Several tracks are on the move, as we see, and each should move in parallel. Let me underline
You are muted, Ambassador. We couldn't hear you for 1 minute.
I'm sorry. I was saying that several tracks are on the move, and each should move in parallel. And let me, on that score, share some of our reflections or perspectives. First, by every measure, justice and accountability processes are crucial in respect of crimes against humanity committed. And it's very really humbling to hear from Washington, from London, and if not some others as well. And Bangladesh remains fully seized and engaged vis-a-vis ICC, IIMM, and also keeping track of ICJ and TUN, and many of you would surely know that. Now, that said, the developed world and some of ASEAN and some of the other relevant countries, we believe, need to engage much deeper and forthright. across the establishments, and this is something I shared with you Toon before, across the establishments, academia, policy institutions, civic space in the developed world, the general attention and interest have diminished on the Rohingyas, whereas it presents a live dossier of genocide. And that's why I can share with you that we are working with ICC to go, moving to the next UN General Assembly in New York to have a global, side event on global attention on justice, wherein we can posit the Rohingya issue as a live and most apt case. It was in April 2021, ASEAN adopted their 5-point action plan. Now, it's been almost, we are getting in 2.5 years away. Clearly, the ASEAN action plan needs careful review and should evolve into much more realistic, impactful, and workable plan that I think should work in the interest of all ethnicities in Myanmar, obviously including the Rohingyas. This is something I think we cannot avoid and sidestep. Among other relevant countries, in our view, engagement of China merits attention on several considerations. They continue to have significant bearing, as we see, and I believe many others, on not only on Myanmar government establishment, but also on people. So we may need to appreciate the wider realities and the fact that return and resolution of Rohingya issue to their homeland can't be dealt as a matter of competition. All, including China, can, and we believe should, contribute in demanding safety, security, dignity of the Rohingyas from the government, as also all ethnicities in Myanmar. This is also something that we are trying to make clearly understandable to Beijing. But I believe that we need to all work in concert. In the wider equation, the UN system can't be also missed out. And we believe that they also need to relook at the MOU, which has expired by now. And they concluded actually with Myanmar. The UN should mobilize all strengths in asking for greater humanitarian access. Now, humanitarian access is not to stand on its own. Humanitarian access is integral and has to be looked together with livelihood support, which is again related to return issue. Because that again, we believe is related or linked to freedom of choices of the Rohingyas as they're about to return to their habitats. So in conclusion, for the wider international community, we need to move on, work on, mobilize all our strengths on humanitarian and livelihood support together. Too often, we see very frankly an eerie silence over political elements, which while many international businesses continue to expand. This certainly does not send a very helpful signal to establishments. So let's understand that 6 years gone, with considerable domestic constraints, Bangladesh can't sit idle. We don't actually have luxury of time. We are ready to engage with any, including UNHCR on that score, so that we can make something right and workable, as I said, with bringing together all actors in a concert. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Riaz. Always happy to have you in our panel. You are very strong and showing solidarity with the Rohingya people. And
may I say something else? I have shared in the chat box for all of us a YouTube link, and this actually may merit everyone's attention, because this was done by a group of youngsters, I think within the 3 weeks of the actual genocide. And it has still some of the very, very raw images and poignant questions, which I believe may merit our attention and revisit. Thank you.
thank you for your message, Ambassador Riaz, and thank you to you again. And we always appreciate the Bangladesh government. We Rohingya will never forget giving us a shelter while thousands of Rohingya were fled from Burma to Bangladesh because of genocidal acts by Burmese military in 2017. And not only to the government, all the people of Bangladesh have shown solidarity and support to the Rohingya people. And today, the world's largest refugee camp in Cox's Bazar and Bangladesh is hosting. Thanks again, Mr. Ambassador Riaz, and really appreciate. Now, our next speaker is Nick from IIMM, head of IIMM. So IIMM has been collecting many evidence since last 2.5 years, and I would like to request Nicholas Gumjian to give a short remark. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tunkin. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to participate in this very important day of remembrance. It's now 6 years. It's hard to believe 6 years as you get older goes by so fast, but 6 years is a big part of someone's life, especially since most of the victims, most of those now in the camps are young people. So for 6 years, many of them, that's the majority of their lives. It's too long. We all can agree on that. It's too long, but this is a situation that doesn't have any easy solution on the horizon. It's a situation that calls for urgency, but it also calls for a sustained response. And that is the challenge, to, as the previous speakers have said, to keep a sustained response. And the particular part of the response that we deal with at the independent investigative mechanism is accountability. There's a recognition that what happened to the Rohingya was not new tactics by the Myanmar military. They were tactics targeting civilian population that have been used for many years in conflicts in other areas of the country against other ethnic groups. And why was it used again? Because they got away with it, because there was no accountability. So there's a recognition that we need accountability now. International justice has a record of quite a few successes, but international justice is very slow. It takes a long time. It takes a sustained effort. We're collecting evidence now while it can be preserved, in the hope to share it with judicial authorities, in the hope that courts will hear all of these important cases about the most serious international crimes and break this cycle of impunity. But we have to have partners for that. We have to find jurisdictions that are able and willing to exercise jurisdiction over these crimes. Perhaps one day, and ideally one day, trials would be heard in Myanmar when there can be fair trials with a real intent to obtain justice for those who were victims of crimes. But all is not completely bleak. I think we're fortunate in that we have ongoing proceedings. We already have partners that we're sharing evidence with. And Tunkin mentioned the courts in Argentina, which have taken up a true universal jurisdiction case. And they're dealing with the complaint that he made, another Rohingya made, about crimes against them that have no link to Argentina at all, not from the victim's point of view or from the perpetrator's point of view. No one is in Argentina, but the courts are willing to take it up because they believe Argentina, having the population having gone through the dirty wars of the 1970s and 1980s, they understand that crimes against humanity are what it says. These crimes are of such significance that it offends all of humanity, and all of humanity needs to respond. And we also have the International Criminal Court taking up the case, which is so important, the World Court for criminal cases. And we have this very, very important proceeding at Argentina. And I see Arsalan Suleiman is here, and I'm sure we'll speak about that, representing the Gambia in that case. But this is, as other speakers have said, this is a critical case that has an opportunity to set a precedent, not just for Myanmar, but for other situations around the world, and defining what is genocide and what kind of acts by a state, what are the obligations of a state to prevent and punish these crimes. And we hope to contribute to that through our evidence. So I thank all of those who are for the invitation. I thank the organizers for the invitation, and all of those of you listening in and joining this conversation for your interest in this event, but more importantly, for your interest in what's happened to the Rohingya. And I know for all of your commitments to do something to try to resolve the situation so that they can live the kind of lives that all human beings deserve, to live in a country where they were born, where they can pursue a livelihood, pursue education, and enjoy all the normal rights of people living in their country. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for your great speech, and thanks to IIMM always, which is playing a key role for our justice cases, and we would like to see, we would like to see more cases in future, and that will be also very good. IIMM will continue support to those cases. And now I would like to request our next speaker, our brother Arsalan Sulaiman, head of Gambia legal team, ICJ genocide case. Brother Aslan, I would like to request you to give a short remark.
Thank you so much, Tunkin, and thank you as well to the organizers for this very important and solemn occasion. 6 years have gone by since the genocidal clearance operations that destroyed much of the Rohingya community that was in northern Rakhine State. And we remember the victims of those clearance operations. We, in particular, remember those who have passed, but also those who survived those genocidal operations. The over 1 million now refugees who are in the camps in Bangladesh, many who have fled to other parts of the world, fleeing the horrific repression that's ongoing in Myanmar. And we also remember the many internally displaced peoples who are still in Rakhine State. It's so sad to read reports that happen almost weekly of Rohingya who desperately are seeking to flee the repression that they continue to experience, taking boats in very dangerous waters, many times not returning from that effort to escape the horror of the lives that are inflicted upon them. And I think it's worth remembering that of course, for the survivors who have left the camps, they are in a very difficult position, and life in the camps are not sustainable, and they need to be able to return back to their homes in dignity, voluntarily, and in safety. But I think we should all remember that the Rohingya still experience a severe, systematic, and institutionalized oppression from birth to death. Many of them have been denied even the dignity of birth registration. They are forced in Myanmar to endure oppressive and restrictive movement restrictions, discrimination and restrictions on access to health, access to education. Their very identity is denied. The government to this day continues to not even utter the word Rohingya because they, for some reason, believe that recognizing the Rohingya's identity as such would perhaps undermine their view that this community does not exist as part of Myanmar society. And that pattern of discrimination, that oppressive net, was perpetrated over a number of years, but the military and the government also perpetrated a hate campaign, which dehumanized the Rohingya and prepared the population at large for the genocidal clearance operations that were to come. And so it is very important to remember this day when these clearance operations began 6 years ago. And as Ambassador Hussein and others have mentioned, to maintain the memory of the Rohingya every day as we continue to seek justice and accountability for the horrific crimes that they have suffered. It is my honor to represent the Gambia in the Gambia's important case at the International Court of Justice against Myanmar, seeking to hold Myanmar as a state responsible for its acts of genocide and violations of the Genocide Convention. And I want to convey the regrets of His Excellency Minister of Justice and Attorney General Dauda Jallow, who very much hoped to be here today, but unfortunately due to an illness was not able to join. And he conveyed his greetings to you all, and in particular to the Rohingya community that is watching. He wanted to emphasize that the Gambia's resolve in this case and the Gambia's resolve to see justice done for the Rohingya has not wavered, will never waver, and will continue as the Gambia pursues this case before the International Court of Justice with the help, assistance, and support of a number of states and organizations, including the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, but many other states who've been represented here today, including Bangladesh, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and others who have pledged to intervene in support of the Gambia in this case. And truly, as other speakers have mentioned, other states like Argentina, for example, have gone through their own past, and that informs some of the interest of countries around the world. Gambia, too, had a difficult past with a ruler who engaged in many atrocities and crimes within the Gambia. And when the Gambia experienced its own democratic renewal in 2016, pursuing this case was one of the ways in which the Gambia wanted to not only stand up for the rights of the Rohingya and stand up as a champion for human rights, but it was also meant to show at the international stage that the Gambia is a leader on promoting and protecting human rights around the world, and in particular for this most egregious of crimes, genocide. I will mention a brief update because we've discussed accountability and the importance of justice. And of course, the Gambia's case at the ICJ is the only case currently that has the promise of holding Myanmar as a state, as a government, accountable for its genocide crimes. And unfortunately, we've had somewhat of a delay in the proceedings because the preliminary objections that were filed by Myanmar delayed the case somewhat. And also the military coup that happened led to some delay within the court proceedings, given the question as to who was going to represent Myanmar before the court. And also, once the court ruled on its Myanmar's preliminary objections and ruled that it does in fact have jurisdiction to continue the case, Myanmar also requested certain extensions of time on the filing of its counter memorial in order to perhaps delay proceedings further. In any event, we're thankful that the court did not further extend the deadline, and that yesterday, in fact, which was the deadline for Myanmar's counter memorial, Myanmar did in fact file its counter memorial. And so that counter memorial just basically means like a statement of defense. So in other words, Myanmar has now filed its statement of defense in this case, and that concludes the first round of the written pleadings. The court usually, in cases like this, requests a second round of pleadings. So after this statement of defense by Myanmar, the Gambia will likely have the opportunity to file what's called a reply brief. It will be a written pleading where the Gambia can look at the defenses that Myanmar has put forward and can reply in writing to the court with arguments as to why those defenses do not insulate Myanmar from the charge of genocide and from the international responsibility that it bears for that genocide. And after that written pleading, Myanmar would also have an opportunity to file a response, which is called a rejoinder. So while we do lament that it has taken a long time for the case to proceed, we are very pleased to see that it is moving forward now. And in the coming weeks, we expect that the court will decide to set deadlines for those two written pleadings that I mentioned, the reply and rejoinder. Once those deadlines are set, the Gambia will ensure that it meets its own deadline to file its reply brief, and will seek to ensure that Myanmar also does the same in filing its rejoinder. And after that written phase of the case is complete, then the court would be in a position to schedule the oral hearings on the merits of the case, which means that we would return again to The Hague before the court in an open session in order to have a public hearing on the charges of genocide against Myanmar. And after that oral hearing, then the court would be in a position to make a ruling on the merits as to Myanmar's culpability for genocide. So I thank you all for this important event. As a member and representative of the legal team for the Gambia, we are honored to be working day in and day out for accountability and justice for the Rohingya. And it's our honor to continue to do so, to represent the Gambia in these proceedings. And we thank you all for your partnership and the important work that all of you are doing in terms of supporting the Rohingya community, supporting accountability efforts, and also supporting efforts to collect and process evidence that can be used in these accountability processes like we have ongoing at The Hague. So thank you very much for all of your efforts. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much, Brother Aslan, for your update about the case. It is very important. Many Rohingyas are enthusiastically waiting to hear what will happen from this case and other cases. And ICJ Gambia case is very important for all of us. And also we are concerned from, that as a survivors, we have seen that ICJ provisional measures since 2020 January. We are appealing to international community, especially UK, US, and others. Security Council should discuss. Burmese military junta is ignoring provisional measure. It's going on for almost 3 years now. So we continuously pushing to UN Security Council to hold a discussion about it. And at the same time, even though it takes time, these justice cases, we believe that justice will prevail in one day. Thank you again, Brother Aslan. And now I would like to request to speak Naomi Kikula. She has been working United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, Simon Cox Center, Prevention of Genocide. And we have a museum, at a museum, Rohingya exhibition is there, which is very good to learn for all the people around the world to see what's happened to the Rohingya people. That is very encouraging to all the Rohingya people to see the exhibition is still there. And thanks for your great work, Naomi. Continued support for the Rohingya people. Now I will turn over to you to speak, to give a short remark.
Thank you so much, Tunkin. It is such a deep honor to be with you here today on behalf of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. It pains us that we have to gather today because gathering means that the world failed to live up to the commitment of never again. We failed to protect your community over the decades that preceded the August 2017 attacks, and we failed to protect you during the attacks. Today, our concern is that your community continues to be neglected as you face ongoing threats of genocide. We join you today to share our deep condolences as an institution dedicated to honoring the memory of Jewish and other victims of the Holocaust who were persecuted like you because of their identity. We understand intimately the pain and loss that genocide causes and that it transcends generations. Over 70 years spans the commission of genocide against the Rohingya and the Jews of Europe, yet we are bound by a common experience. It pains us that the commitment continues to ring hollow to never again. We understand intimately the strength that it takes to move forward each day, that for many of you watching, trauma is something that you live with. We know how hard it can be to speak about your experiences and of the often unfair dynamic that exists, whereby you have to advocate, including at times by sharing deeply painful and personal experiences, in order for the world to care. We're indebted to each of you who have spoken, to the brave women who testified recently in Argentina. You bear the weight of your community on your shoulders as you share your experiences and speak of your hopes for the future. We also join you today to stand in solidarity as we've tried to, including prior to the 2017 attacks. In 2015, we released a report that outlined clearly the risk of genocide facing the Rohingya. Many of those risks continue to persist. In response, we were confronted, as many of you today have experienced, with a narrative that Burma and its nascent reforms and slow transition to democracy was a success story, one that conveniently ignored the plight of the Rohingya. We said then, and we say it again now, democracy cannot be built off the back of or with no regard to vulnerable minorities. You cannot have a successful democracy or transition when genocide is being committed, nor, as we watch the military, the entity that has perpetrated genocide, continue to carry out crimes against communities throughout Burma, can a democracy or any viable state be forged in a context of rampant impunity. In 2018, we made the rare finding that the Tatmadaw, the military, had committed genocide against the Rohingya community. This was a genocide that was perpetrated on our watch in real time. This is not a situation where there is a lack of evidence. This is a situation where there is a lack of recognition and reckoning and action. We're today committed to sharing with the world what happened and of the ongoing risks. As you noted, Tunkan, our institution, is a museum, and we know the power of preserving history and educating for future generations, of creating a record of a people persecuted and documenting how the crimes were committed. This includes explaining that for genocide to happen, ordinary people, neighbors, often have to look away or play a role in the crimes, that speech, including through social media, can turn deadly, and so too can silence. With the help of partners in the Rohingya community, we have worked to apply these lessons and build the exhibition that you mentioned, dedicated to educating policymakers and the public about the genocide against the Rohingya. Located in Washington, D.C., we seek to bring U.S. and other governments' policymakers to learn about your community and hear your stories. But we also hope that through the online version of the exhibit, we're helping to change the hearts and minds of people within Burma itself. We hope that it helps to set the historical record for the future, to counter those who deny the nature of the crimes, and most of all, compel action to save lives today. We're also committed to working with you to secure justice. In Cox's Bazar, I was told over and over again that we will wait for justice, that we have a right to have perpetrators held responsible. We are in awe of the work that your community is doing, groundbreaking efforts like the case that you and Thomas Quintana are leading in Argentina, the case that is also going forward before the ICJ that we just heard about. We know that the road to justice is long. We've seen in the context of the Holocaust cases of Nazi perpetrators who were in their 90s when they were held responsible. Holocaust survivors have not lost hope, and we know that you will not rest until you too see that those who harmed your loved ones are held responsible. In noting this, we feel it's critical to reflect on the gap that exists in the international criminal justice architecture. The successfulness of future cases and of other forms of transitional justice starts and finishes with victims and survivors. Yet often their rights, needs, aspirations, and expectations are a secondary priority. Survivors need to be at the core of shaping and advancing justice initiatives. There needs to be a greater attention paid to ensuring that survivor communities are provided with opportunities to learn about the various justice initiatives, that their rights are protected. This includes basics like ensuring consent is given and ensuring confidentiality is preserved when they participate in documentation efforts. And critically, that those victims who do participate in judicial processes have support that allows them to participate in cases that will often be held far from where they live. This includes the provision of physical protection, financial assistance so that they can travel to testify, and psychosocial support as they travel the often painful path of sharing their experiences, reliving them while they testify. We support these efforts because we know that, as Ambassador Hussein noted, the making of a genocide determination is just the beginning. The commitment to genocide prevention, to living up to the obligations intended in the Genocide Convention, is a commitment that is an enduring one. We need to be mindful and respectful of the expectations that we have raised within the Rohingya community and deliver on what we've promised to do. We need to do so because today there are 1 million people yearning to return home. Hundreds of thousands in Rakhine facing restrictions to their most basic human rights, and they continue to be denied citizenship, which exacerbates their vulnerability. They're not allowed, as Arslan noted, to even exist as a Rohingya people. Their very identity is deemed a threat to the state. On a visit to Cox's Bazar, I met a gentleman who in 1973, 1978, and again in 1992 had to flee. He told me that our lives will finish in ways with us floating. We cannot accept that outcome. We will continue to stand with you. Thank you again, and we are here with you today as you mourn your lost loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi, for your remarks and also highlighted again about the exhibition in the museum. And it is very important you mentioned that most of the people in Burma, they denied, before the coup. Now we have seen solidarity. And it is important this kind of exhibition will give education to those people who really denied us. So I believe that United States, there are so many Burmese activists and many Burmese people, they will visit your museum, the exhibition, and they can learn more, and also from other parts of the world. Thank you again, Naomi. Now, I would like to request to speak, Thomas Quintana, who is UN former special reporter, and also he is head of Argentina case, UJ case legal team from Burmese Rohingya Organization, UK. And he has been visited many times to Rakhine State, witness from the ground what's happened to the Rohingya and all the people of Burma. So Thomas, I will turn over to you.
Thank you, Tunkin, and hello, everybody. I wanted to make just a few points. First point is the following. We have to say that the truth about the genocide cannot be contested anymore. That's very important. The level of participation in this event, in this Remembrance Day, the determination made by different governments about the genocide in Rakhine State, and many other reports from the INGO community indicate that the truth about the genocide against the Rohingya cannot be contested. And this, we need to repeat this many times because maybe other governments, maybe other organizations will start to challenge the fact that the genocide was committed against the Rohingya. That's very important to say. Of course, it will be also important to have a judicial body, a legal body, to also make this determination, whether it is the International Court of Justice with the Gambia case, whether it is the International Criminal Court with a ruling, or the Argentinian case, or any other universal jurisdiction case around the world. It's important that the judicial body issues a resolution with a determination about the genocide committed against the Rohingya. Because, memorialization is very important. At some point, some others could start denying what happened in Rakhine State in August 25, 2017. And we have been very strong about the fact that the truth about the genocide cannot be contested anymore. I also think that, in particular, this event, Tunkin, and the importance of the people participating in this event is it's a way of giving back to you, to the Rohingya community, your dignity, to ratifying the importance of your identity, the importance of your community your culture, and all elements that has to do with the people, the Rohingya people. The international community needs to give you back what was intended to be destroyed by the Tatmadaw in Rakhine State, which is destroying partially your identity. And you, the Rohingya people, should take it very importantly, the fact that we are giving you back. We are helping you to give you back the recognition of your identity, the recognition of your right to exist as a community that was threatened 6 years ago in Rakhine State. I want to take this opportunity to thank especially governments, and in this case also the Bangladesh government, for their efforts in bringing witnesses to Argentina and helping the Argentinian case to move forward, to progress in the investigation about what happened in Rakhine State in 2017. We really appreciate the efforts of different governments, the UK government, the US government, and especially, as I said, the Bangladesh government for their commitment. It's an amazing position that the Bangladesh government has taken in supporting these initiatives for the sake of holding to account those who committed the crimes. We believe that it's also very important that other ethnic communities from Myanmar understood at some point what happened to the Rohingya. And because other ethnic minorities have suffered for decades the same kind of violence that then the Rohingya suffered in 2017. And it's very important that other ethnic minorities is expressing sympathy and and solidarity to what happened to Rohingya. And this is a proof that a better Myanmar is possible. I want to conclude by saying that the memories from survivors about the 25th of August 2017 cleansing operation remain tragically fresh. But those responsible have always denied the facts and the patterns of systematic abuses, but they will have to respond, as well as those who are accomplices. We shouldn't miss this opportunity to hold to account the Tatmadaw for the genocide against the Rohingya. We shouldn't miss this opportunity. My view is that we lost that chance in 2010 when the Tatmadaw, after 40 years of military ruling, was moving forward towards a democratic transition without any prospects of accountability for decades of systematic human rights abuses against not only ethnic minorities, but also Burmese civilian activists. Let's do it now. Let's attain justice. Survivors will feel relief and repaired, and the foundation for an inclusive and peaceful Myanmar will be laid. Thank you all. Thank you, Tung Kin, in particular.
Thank you so much, Thomas. You have highlighted very important points. We cannot miss this opportunity. We must move forward for the justice, and also, on Argentina case, that bring in these 6 women and 1 man to Buenos Aires to testify was a great moment for all of us, because this case is not only for the Rohingya, for all the people of Burma. Our hearts and minds are with our sisters and brothers from our other communities, Kashin, Karan, Karani, Shan, Shin, Sagai, in Magui, Burmese brothers and sisters. Every day, Burmese military is committing crimes. So when we talk about justice, it's not only for the Rohingya people, for all the people of Burma. We are trying hard to get justice. We will continue to move from here. And also you mentioned the culture, identity of the Rohingya and culture, and we are leading. One thing that international community should recognize the Rohingya people and Rohingya capacity. Give us chance to and Consalas always put Rohingya together with you whenever you have consultation, whenever you have meetings. And many meetings we have seen sometimes Rohingya, without Rohingyas, there are some decisions we have seen. So we do not want to see that we are growing, we are having capacity. We will continue to work hard for justice and for the rights of the Rohingya, for justice for Rohingya and all the people of Burma. Thank you, Thomas, again. Now, our next speaker is Ambassador, His Excellency Yuyun Wayunigram, representative of Indonesia to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. Dear Yuyun, over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening from Jakarta. This August 25, I remember the victims and survivors of the 2017 attack of genocide against Rohingya and call for justice and accountability for them. 6 years ago, the military launched the clearance of operations in Arakan and killed over hundreds and thousands of Rohingyas, committed arbitrarily arrest and detention, rape and sexual violence, burned down over 300 of their villages. The various attacks against Rohingya exacerbating the decades-long systematic and targeted persecution against them as the people of Myanmar. Today, 6 years later, the survivors of Rohingya remain at risk now and more than ever. So in my capacity as representative of Indonesia to ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, I remain committed to continue to highlight the issue, concerns, and the voices of Rohingya, especially the voices of women and children at the regional level at ASEAN, or in my spheres of influence at national and regional and international level. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Her Excellency Yuyun. Sorry, I put your title before. It's important, for your time. It's quite late in Indonesia, you are joining. We really appreciate for your time, for the short remarks. And ASEAN been playing a key role. And ASEAN have to play, much more stronger role for the solution of the Rohingya because of ongoing genocide. Many people are fleeing by boat to ASEAN. Indonesia given a shelter with thanks to Indonesia government and the people of Indonesia. They are kind and their hospitality and generosity. Thank you again, Yuyun. Now, our next speaker is Professor Mansur Hassan OBE, and he is from Center for Peace and Justice, Bright University. My dear brother Mansur, now over to you.
Thank you very much, Brother Tunkin. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important event. 6 years down the road, we remember this tragic and genocidal day. And as you know, BRAC, our sister organization, and BRAC University has been involved from the very first day of the tragic event that happened 6 years ago. In a way, it has become a forgotten crisis, I suppose, in many ways. And I must recognize here at the very outset the contribution of the government of Bangladesh and the people of Bangladesh. From the very first day, they have come forth very generously to support the refugees. But also have to recognize the fact that there has been a sharp decline in funds over the years. Because of competing crises, we know that the resources are scarce, but there has been a sharp decline, and that is affecting the quality of life of refugees in the refugee camp. So I think in a way, we also have to recognize the fact that the important educational and development activities that has been happening in the camps over the years, but also have to recognize the fact that there is a growing frustration among young people in the camps. And I particularly emphasize young because there is a large youth population in the camps. And if we don't actually cater for their needs, then we are really creating a big problem, in a way, a ticking bomb in a way, if I can use that phrase, if we don't deal with this the future issue. We also have to keep in mind the fact that there has to be a return to Myanmar, but that has to be a safe and sustainable return. And the right to return is an inalienable right of the Rohingya refugees. They want to return to their homeland, to their home country. But we also have to recognize the fact that post-coup Myanmar is a very dangerous place for not just the Rohingyas, but for other communities. And the international community has to recognize that fact and work together in a concerted effort with ASEAN and other international organizations and communities. Particularly the role of the UN is, I think, is very important. So in a way, we have to do our best. And today's event, I think, is an important example that we need to put the Rohingya refugee issue up on the agenda in the international community, and it cannot be allowed to be forgotten. We continue to work with you, Tun Khen, and other organizations to keep the flag flying and to work within the camps and outside the camps in order to fulfill our objectives and attain the goals that we want to attain. Thank you very much, Tun Khen, for inviting me and to this important event, and wish you all the best with your future work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mansoor, for your short remarks and highlighting the situation in Bangladesh refugee camp. It is very important. We would like to see improvement in refugee camp, especially education and others, as Ambassador Rashid Hussain also highlighted. That is very important. How can a population grow without education? What will be our future after 10 years? Who can advocate for the Rohingya people? Like myself and others here, Brother Neselwi, Kuaung Jomo, we all are genocide survivors. We all fled from our country. Luckily, we were able to study. So like us, thousands of Rohingya people in the camp. So it is very important for long run to rebuild the community and especially educating a community. Otherwise, people might misuse them, women traffickers and others and criminal gangs, and that is quite worrying for long run. Thanks again for highlighting the situation in the camps. And now we have, another two speakers and one video from Tom Andrews, current UN Special Reporter on Burma. So video we will play the last. We do not want to distract our honorable speakers who are in this panel. And from now, our two speakers are first is, one is Kuaung Chomo and second will be Kuneselwi. And I want to point out here, these two brothers are from our organizing Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day Committee. I want to point out one thing here is we have invited actually two sisters, one from Bangladesh, one from diaspora. So from Bangladesh, one couldn't join because of connection and internet, and another one is DC. She couldn't join with having other events. So we would like to make clear that women are included in our committee, and so unfortunately things happen different way because of timing and other events. This Remembrance Day is very important to highlight for all the organizations and all the activists. So now I will turn over to Kuaung Chomo, who have done a lot of work, CSI in Burma, humanitarian aid organization. He worked in UNHCR last 20 years ago. And you all may know that he was appointed recently National Unity Government Deputy Minister for Human Rights. But I want to make clear that in our committee, he is not as a NUG deputy minister. He is as a member of Rohingya community in our Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day committee. Since beginning last 3 years ago, he was a member. So that's I want to make clear. And I would like to turn over to now Kwang Jomo to give a short remark.
Thank you, Kutunkin. I think the speaker order, I should be giving a closing remark, but Ku Neselman is supposed to be speaking first. But however, I think if Ku Neselman is ready, you can go first and I can talk after whatever, or I can talk first. Yeah,
it's okay as you wish, no problem.
Yeah, Kunisali, go first. Kunisali is a co-founder of Free Rohingya Coalition, and he is also a member of Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day organizing committee. And Kunisali, I turn over to you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Kotunge. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as a member of this event organizing committee, I am grateful for your presence today and for delivering your speech. Despite the seemingly hopeless situation, your solidarity motivates us, renewing our hope that we have many friends who support our cause. We, the Rohingya community, can only raise our voices. We have been doing so for decades. Unfortunately, the situation remains unchanged and we witness daily deterioration. Although we have seen some progress, such as cases at the International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court, and the Argentina Court, as well as the acknowledgement of genocide by the US government, we are concerned that half of our population may disappear before justice is served. This concern arises from the worsening condition in the camp in Bangladesh. The Rohingya genocide survivor taking refuge there face threat of violence, numerous restrictions, limited access to formal education, and inadequate health care, with the most recent blow being the reduction in ration by the World Food Program, WFP. Given this dire situation, Rohingya genocide survivor embarked on extremely risky journey to Southeast Asian nation, primarily Malaysia. While some may reach their destination, many perish at sea, fall victim to human trafficker, suffer torture, drown, or face long-term imprisonment, lasting a minimum of 5 years. In Myanmar, about approximately 130,000 people have been confined to camp for over 11 years. Recently, 100 lost their life in Cyclone Mocha. Myanmar's military region denied them access to humanitarian aid provided by the UN and the international NGOs. About 450,000 Rohingya endure apartheid conditions, with continuous violation of international law by the military, despite the provisional measure issued by the ICJ. The repatriation brokered by China cannot be truly labeled as such. The military regime has constructed a detention center resembling a concentration camp for returning. As long as the military regime remain in power, Myanmar remain unsafe for Rohingya. These criminals have been terrorizing the entire population of Myanmar since the coup in February 2021. Therefore, I honestly request all government officials to take decisive action against the Myanmar military regime and assist in establishing a democratic Myanmar that grants equal rights for all, including the Rohingya. In conclusion, I sincerely thank you for your solidarity and participation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kundin. You highlighted how important is inclusive future Federal Union of Burma. Rohingya should be recognized, restore the rights of Rohingya. That is very important when we talk about future include Federal Union of Burma. Rohingya should not be neglected. Rohingya should be part of it. And now I would like to request Kundin to open the Tom and Ruth's message, who couldn't join us in person, and he is current UN Special Reporter on Burma.
It is an honor to participate in this important event marking the 6th anniversary of the genocidal attacks against the Rohingya in Myanmar. Rohingya Genocide Commemoration, a time for reflection, inclusivity, and solidarity. The Rohingya were attacked by the Myanmar military, not because of anything that they had done, but because of who they are and the God they pray to. Over the 6 years since these horrific attacks, Rohingya leaders and advocates have worked tirelessly for justice, accountability, and for the safety and sustainability of the Rohingya community, who continue to be denied fundamental rights and continue to face terrible hardships. All too often, these leaders and advocates have faced denial and indifference by those who are in positions to make a difference, government officials who have all too often been content to issue vacuous statements or vote for resolutions that have no consequences. Let me be frank. The members of the Rohingya community who I have spoken with are tired of empty promises. Their children cannot eat political rhetoric or countless UN resolutions that go nowhere. I agree that this Rohingya genocide commemoration should be a time for reflection, inclusivity, and solidarity. But it should also be a time for action. Action that can make a genuine difference for the besieged Rohingya community. Action that holds government leaders to account for not holding those responsible for a genocide to account. An action that demands that the Rohingya community, who have suffered so much, be provided the sustainable support that they and their children need and deserve. It has been 6 years, and the international community has yet to take effective, strategic, and coordinated action against those who are responsible for the Rohingya genocide, the Myanmar military. Indeed, the senior general who commanded these forces, who committed these genocidal attacks, is now commanding forces that are committing probable war crimes and crimes against humanity throughout Myanmar. As I have argued before the UN Human Rights Council and General Assembly, it is imperative that Min Aung Hlaing and his collaborators and enablers be denied the three things that sustain their atrocities: money, weapons, and legitimacy, and that he and they face justice. I believe that it is past time for the UN Security Council to consider, debate, and vote on a resolution that imposes sanctions and an arms embargo on the military junta, while referring them to the International Criminal Court to face justice. Such a resolution will almost certainly face a veto in the Security Council, but I nevertheless believe that the Rohingya need and deserve to have this debate in the Security Council, and that the members of the Council should be required to cast their votes and explain their votes before the world. But strong, effective action does not require passage of a UN Security Council resolution. Those nations who support justice, human rights, and accountability for the Rohingya, and all those who are under siege in Myanmar, have an opportunity, and I believe an obligation, to form a working coalition to take strong, coordinated action that will deny the military of Myanmar what it requires to sustain itself. What is missing is not a lack of knowledge of what can and should be done, but the political will to get it done. Let us commemorate the 6th anniversary of the Rohingya genocide by honoring those who lost their lives in that horror, saluting and thanking Rohingya leaders and advocates who are on the front lines of this struggle, and by committing ourselves to inclusivity, solidarity, and the action necessary for justice, human rights, and hope to prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Kunisalwe, for opening the video, and he really highlighted important points about political will and how important is UN Security Council a debate and cutting ties with the military legitimacy and also financial cut to the military, which we are advocating. We have to move continuously coming here, to do more advocacy on this issue. I believe that international community will do more actions. And now I will turn over to Brother Kwam Jomo, who is a member of Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day Organizing Committee. He is also currently Deputy Minister of Human Rights, National Unity Government of Myanmar. Thank you, Kwam Jomo, joining us, and I turn over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Tonkin for great moderations, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be delivering a closing remark in this important event. And I think 6 years later, we still see a lot of repeated statements and a statement of concerns and condemns and things like that when it's come to the Rohingya and also larger Burma democratization effort. I think what had happened to the Rohingya people indeed is there is no words to describe the intensity that differentiates the other sort of crime that have been happening across the country, which we oppose truly as well. And I think in the eyes of the world, it's happened with intentions in different momentum, different shape, in a continuous way since 1962. As of today, it's ongoing. So the first thing that I would like to reiterate here, although I hear a lot of inspiring remark from different speakers here today in this panel, and to be adding on that, I think this ending the cycle of impunity that Burmese military has long enjoyed, and enable them to continue to their unfinished business against the Rohingya people. Today in the Rakhine State, there is approximately 600,000 Rohingya. Among those who 150,000 people are living in a Nazi concentration camp, similar set since 2012, without the hope when they will be able to go back to the place of origin, despite 700,000 people who fled to Bangladesh in 2017. And the unfinished business goes on in Rakhine State, and international community, of course, has different competing priorities around the world with Afghanistan and Syria and so on. But I think it is important that the international community take coordinated actions to ensure that the military junta are not able to continue the mission they have started for many years ago to carry out the atrocities crimes, the crimes that can be categorically fall under all three different crimes under international humanitarian law, from crimes against humanity to genocide. So it is vital that a coordinated effort with a measurable, tangible action is required, as well as the look into the departure of the Rohingya people by boats and getting arrested every day in different part of Myanmar indicates the dire situations, how people are trying to survive in Rakhine State, despite being the second largest ethnic populations in Rakhine State as of today, which is a politically representable size of populations in Myanmar. We are gradually being pushed out by different factors created intentionally. So the the spotlight should go equally as those who are in Rakhine State and those who are in Bangladesh, who requires to be going back voluntarily with their own will and safety to the place of origin. And I think again, I think it's what had happened and what had happened and it will remain as genocide, and it was genocide, it is genocide, it will be a genocide. Therefore, we have a collective responsibility, those who determine genocide as from a legal standpoint, to demonstrate our action based on the determinations, and as well as the moral responsibility toward the humanity to stop these horrific crimes against Rohingya people. I think the second thing that I would like to touch here is the Rohingya crisis, the durable solutions for the Rohingya crisis as well. The Burma need to be a democratic nations, like Brother Kunesanlu mentions, in order to find a durable solutions in Rohingya. As long as the country is in the hand of military junta, we will never find a solutions. And the history did not suggest that it was realistic and feasible. 1978 exodus, 1992 exodus, and failed repatriation at that time indicates how Bangladesh has suffered as a consequence of the political unwillingness to be being implemented by the Myanmar successive government. And I think therefore we will have to look like what has not worked in the past and what is realistic, and international community need to we would like to urge international community to provide comprehensive support to end this dictatorship once and for all, that will help us parallelly to find a durable solutions and deliver justice for Rohingya and all others who have been the victims by different victims, but by the same perpetrators over the period of time. Lastly, I think we should also express our sincere appreciations to all international community. It has been a great burden to international community, regional country, to handle these catastrophic situations. Despite, I think there is no alternative option for Rohingya in Bangladesh to survive. So international continued support to survive, like as such humanitarian assistance, is vital to ensure that we are not falling into a like hunger or we are not facing like malnutrition situations. So therefore, I think please respective country to continue to provide the humanitarian support and education and other development support that help us to be transforming our potentiality into resilience to survive in these difficult situations. I think lastly, I would like to also thank to Bangladesh government for their generosity and to their ability to cope with these complex situations with very limited resource and impacting their social economical life in habitant around Cox's Bazar area. Definitely the problem raised from in Burma, and the solution is Burma, and we will have to ensure our people go back, which is their will, with the safety, dignity, and voluntarily to the place where they originally belong to, ensure that justice is delivered without delay, and the Rohingya people are treated equally as any other ethnic in Myanmar, and where the inclusivity matter and across the political spectrum in Myanmar. And like me, I am part of the government now as a member of the cabinet, but it doesn't like it's not enough. We will have to do more. We'll have different institutions that will require hearing Rohingya voices. And as I mentioned earlier, Rohingya still is the politically representable size of population. Having one, of course, member of community in the cabinet does not compensate all the political rights. So that's we're working toward to that, and we will need your support. And I thank you all for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ku Aungchamu, for your powerful closing remarks and highlighting Rohingya are equal to all other ethnic nationalities of Burma. That is what we are looking forward, and practical steps from Burmese, national unity government. And so we are at the end, and it's already almost 2 hours. Actually, we shouldn't take that long, is because this it's very important event. So I really hope that you don't mind for taking long, and I really hope that 2024 event, before there will be some good developments we will see, and looking forward to see you all next year. I'm very sorry, earlier 3 to 4 minutes we had some technical issue when we were starting up, and I hope that you all will come and join us again when Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day Organizing Committee will invite you next year. And thank you for all your time. Thank you very much again. And I wish all of you wonderful weekend. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Kutunkin. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.